Hello, hello, hello. Brian Christian here with Life Imagined. Just wanted to come on here and share some thoughts that were coming to my mind. I don't get a chance to do public videos on Facebook as often as I'd like nowadays, but we do have a Patreon group where people subscribe to get exclusive videos on a lot of the things that I'm sharing right now. I wanted to share a little bit about the Jesus Egregore. And I'm going to be doing a whole series on egregores. Sorry for the loud noise. I've got my window open here. Hopefully the traffic noise isn't too loud. Anyway, if you haven't gotten this book, I'm actually going to be writing a book and doing a series on this, only because this is a really good book, but it's very hard to read. The verbiage and the way words are used can be very difficult. But this is the book. It's called Egregores, okay? And it's by Mark Stavish. It's called The Occult Entities That Watch Over Human Destiny. Of course, everything that we create of ideologies, especially in our collective, is an egregore. It's basically, I think in his book here, how he defines an egregore. That's what I'm looking for right now. See if I can find it. Probably can't, but I can just tell you what an egregore is. An egregore is a psychic connection that is basically where, whether it be one person in a family that becomes influential, that influences the whole family and maybe society. But an egregore is a belief system that has been collectively agreed upon to the point of empowering it as a consciousness, even though it isn't real. It becomes real in the minds of those who believe in it until it takes on its own personality, its own consciousness, its own agenda, okay? Now, of course, there are egregores that we create to anchor ourselves in the 3D simulation that you can use as an extension of higher self. It's funny because the Tibetan monks knew how to create the gods. That's what they were doing, and at one point, they created two feminine gods that they did similar religious rites with, and the one god got all upset and started plaguing people, so they had to outlaw the worship of that god to disintegrate the egregore that they had created. But basically, these egregores were meant to worship you, not for you to worship them, according to the writings in the Egregore book on ancient Eastern religion and this type of thing. So it's very interesting. He doesn't go a lot into detail with the Jesus Egregore, but that would be more my department of the experience I have had since, being a Christian for 38 and a half years, or now about 39 years, and before finally getting free from a lot of the propaganda and mind control within Christianity. Now, why am I on here? I'm not here to speak against anybody. I'm just here to expose what we're actually, what is going on with this current Jesus Egregore movement. And you notice I put the term egregore in there because I'll just be perfectly honest. When the resurrection of Jesus came, the real Jesus transitioned and went back to origin, and the egregore Jesus came out of the tomb. So this was the egregore that everybody bows down to and worships and exalts today. And it's a false awakening, folks. It's a false awakening. Just so you know, there is a lot going on here with, how can I put it? You can go to church and you can see signs, miracles, and wonders. There's a lot going on right now. I think I was watching somebody on some conference that just showed up on Google video, and they're just going around drunk in the spirit, singing, "Oh, we drank the blood, we drank the blood, the cross, the cross, the cross, the cross." And I'm not going to name names, but this is an individual who many look to as awake, as, oh, he's not a regular Christian. Well, what kind of Christians are there? There's only, I don't care if you're mainstream, half inclusion, full inclusion, whatever, Baptist, Lutheran. If the foundation is the need for blood sacrifice, if the foundation is a need for a God outside of yourself, to feel loved or worthy or, a part of something, then you're living within a twisted view of yourself. You're still living as a victim. And I think that a lot of this movement right now is here because there's a lot of fear that some preachers that have been in the business for a while are about to lose some money. They're about to lose some followers, and to people leaving religion, vacating the egregore, instead of continually feeding it and empowering it. See, an egregore has to be fed praise, it has to be fed worship, it has to be fed frequencies, it has to be fed energy. And what that egregore is it's a man-made belief system that's manifesting as a deity for people to bow down to because they don't believe they're good enough to be the hero in their own eyes. Who they are isn't enough in their own eyes, and therefore they need this egregore. And but unfortunately what's happening is a lot of the influential leaders of Christianity are going around the country trying to fit in with what's really going on with this awakening. And the awakening, which is bringing people to zero, out of the Christian language, out of the Christian narrative, out of the need for blood sacrifice, out of the need for a sky daddy, out of the need for misogyny and the male version of God, out of a need for women being under and partial, out of a need for slavery to be acceptable in the Old and New Testaments, coming out of these types of narratives that are really sickening and unhealthy. And so what they've done is they've just changed their language. Now they're using terms like vibration, frequency, quantum, light, Christ consciousness, co-creators, and it sounds really good. Guess what? It's the same old stuff, people. It's the same old junk. Now, am I against where people are at? Not at all. Everybody has to walk through that. But for those of us that have kind of come out of that, and I see this going on a lot, I see people jumping out and jumping in, jumping out and jumping in. There's some leaders on Facebook that have quite a bit of clout who 1 minute are jumping out of Christianity and the next minute are jumping back in, especially if they get popularized by the Christians. And I'll tell you what, Christian leaders are going to come up to whosoever they see online that is out of the Christian box, and they're going to woo you. They're going to be like, oh, we just love who you are. You're amazing. You're amazing. And we would just love for you to join our group and come and minister to us. And it sounds like such an opportunity to bridge and all of these things. Well, can I just tell you that if you're no longer a Christian, but you're trying to bridge Christians, you're actually bridging your mind that still believes you're a Christian. Because really, there is only you experiencing yourself as the many, if you get down to the heart of what's really going on. And in that Elohim, that many as the one, everything that you're experiencing is your mind. So everybody you're trying to get out of Christianity or create a bridge for is your own subconscious that is still considering that and is manifesting in the form of a bridge ministry. And there's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong at all. We've got to start somewhere. We've got to get there, okay? But the point is, we don't want to be the cheerleader of the egregore. We want to finally shut down. My life right now is to basically be a point of contact for people to stay free from the religious box, to free fall in the embrace of being their own hero and being God, having a human experience. And that's kind of my heart. That's where I'm going, is to get people in a place where they can love themselves, they can love others, they can have practical application, they can have critical thinking. And what I mean by critical thinking is thinking for themselves rather than living in the woo-woo. I want to see people come out of the egregore version of spirituality, and that is constantly, desperately looking for a sign to feel validated or feel secure, and to enter into a place of a self-embrace in which they can come into just simply realizing they're okay. They don't need to add or take away from who they are. They don't need to go looking for a special meeting or a special encounter. Let me tell you something. All religion will offer you is what God's about to do. If you ever notice, every time there's these big proclamations as God's about to do this, this is what's coming, this is what's about to happen. And you notice there's never anything that is presently happening in religion. It's always some big event that everybody's waiting for, and it never really quite gets there. And when it does, it's like, oh, well, everybody didn't do what they were supposed to, so maybe next time. See, this pumping up is to keep you from being present. It's to keep you from embracing the now. It's to drug you with dopamine in the brain to pump you up. Can I tell you that if you believe there is a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, and you're on a journey to get there, and every day you're just excited about that pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, do you know that it will actually pump up even more dopamine in your brain for you to get high off of the concept of an arrival? And this is why the journey is so much more powerful than the arrival. How many know that when you're on the journey of going somewhere, you're really excited? You get there, it's great, but it doesn't seem to be as pumped up as the journey to get there. Why? Because the journey to get there also has a chemical reaction that is feeding your brain, okay? And so your brain gets all fed. You go to a church conference and they get up and go, hallelujah, glory. Guess what it's feeding? It's feeding your chemical reaction. And that chemical reaction automatically believes it is getting some sort of download from the Jesus that walked the earth 2,000 years ago, when that Jesus went back to source or went back to origin. Maybe has been incarnated again, who knows? But ultimately, the Jesus that came out of the grave was an egregore that was created by the minds of the people that were desperate. Now, let me explain why it's desperate. Because whenever you believe you're not enough in yourself, whenever you have been taught or brainwashed to believe you are not good enough and you need a savior or you need a sacrifice, then the problem here is your perception of self. Now, of course, we could say, well, the God of the Bible taught us we weren't good enough, and that, again, would be propaganda. Now, where is my Bible? I have a dusty old Bible here somewhere. Now, it's a little bent. Here's my Bible. King James, man. I was a King James dude. Now, anything wrong with this? Not at all. It's a great book, man. It goes along with Mother Goose and all the other books. Is it a book made by God? No, it's not. It's a book made by people. And unfortunately, most of the narrative on the Old Testament didn't even come from the Jews. It came from ancient religions that the Jews copied. Because I don't know why. Maybe they just felt like, well, this sounds good. Let's add this in, and then we'll change this, that, and the other, and we'll make it our own. I don't know exactly why they did it, but they've been doing it all through their history. I mean, they seem to find themselves in captivity and worshiping everybody else's God. And so, you know, it's I like that, Billy. He says, I purposely clapped and sang louder in the charismatic movement to get others to join in so I or we could get higher in the spirit. I remember that. It was called dopamine release. Isn't that amazing? And but anyway, this Bible, you have to cherry pick from it. Now, again, I am not coming against, I'm not trying to come against people's beliefs. I'm not trying to be mean to people. I'm just stating there's no verification of this book whatsoever. The only verification we can find is ancient Sumerian, some ancient Egyptian, some ancient Babylonian, more probably from the books of Enoch, which the watchers in there, a lot of those are egregores as well. But really, the Christianity that has been brought forth with Jesus being the mascot comes from Rome. It comes from Rome. It doesn't come from 12 disciples whose names are American, okay? Or some of them, you know. It doesn't come from the first 4 Gospels that nobody knows who wrote, so 180 years later they put Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John on there, okay? And so what you have to do is you have to cherry pick, because the New Testament, Jesus says, submit to your masters. It's good to be a slave. In the New Testament, it's good to be a slave. In the Old Testament, there's all kinds of wives needing to submit to their husbands. All kinds of propaganda that America has used to profit from, that Rome has used to profit from. And so it is evil. I'm sorry to say it's evil. Now, some would say, well, Brian, I thought you said everything is God. Everything is God, and everything we're experiencing is God. Yes, everything is God, and everything we are experiencing is God. So does that mean we're supposed to continually experience it? Not necessarily. When you've experienced something, let's say, okay, we planned this whole thing to walk through religion, to walk through all of this, okay? And exactly, Kent. Abraham was a moon worshiper, for example. Unfortunately, he got stuck in religion, or somebody used his name later on to get him to be the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, or to get him to be a part of that whole Enlil ancient Sumerian stuff that was going on, okay? But no, it's true. You have a lot of mix mash in there that eventually turned into Christianity. But, the narrative here, and I'll give you an example. Moses. Let's use Moses as an example for a minute. We would say, the Christians would say Moses wrote the first 5 books of the Bible. He was the deliverer of 1 million people out of Egypt that walked the wilderness for 40 years. They saw signs, miracles, and wonders. Egypt was devastated by the plagues. Guess what? We don't have any proof of any of that. We don't even have any geological proof. We don't have proof of 1 million people in the wilderness, let alone 50. We don't have any Red Seas. We don't have any plagues in Egypt. What we do have in ancient Egyptian manuscripts is we have a guy that fits the description of Moses, who was a pharaoh who took off with about 50 people to start his own religion, and went from a mini-God concept to a one-God concept, okay? And so that's actually all we really have about Moses. What we do have is we have ancient Sumerian text that depicts the book of Genesis and the Eden story completely opposite to the Christian narrative. While in the ancient Sumerian, Enlil is Yahweh, who's this bloodthirsty alien who's come to mess with the DNA of mankind and control them and make them slaves to mine the metals of the earth in a Eden of the gods, which was a prison camp, and the humans were the only ones naked. And so when you see Adam and Eve hiding from Yahweh, what you have is Enki, the younger brother of Enlil, also called the serpent in ancient Sumerian text, for giving disclosure and saying, that's not your God. He's a charlatan, a fake, and all he's done is come with technology to mess with your gene pool and to bring you under control. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you all of the upgraded genes and alien DNA, so that when you wake up, no one can hold you in bondage. No one can control you and make you a slave again. So that's why they hid. And that's why Yahweh kicked them out, so that they wouldn't turn the others from him. Now later on, we see the Tower of Babel, where Yahweh had to come down to see what was going on. Obviously, according to some of the ancient text and carvings of spaceships and motherships and aliens and that which was in the caves 8,000 years before the Jews, that date back supposedly 400,000 years. He was most likely in a ship, and he came down using his technology to scare those that had come into oneness. They had ascended, they had become one, they were not moving in spellbinding languages. And that's when Enlil came and messed with their DNA again and brought them back and brought them down into verbal speech, rather than vibrating at a telekinesis of incarnations within one another, which was the higher realm of what they were operating in, okay? And so, when I see people use the Bible as a reference, it's time to get off of the how can I put it, the training wheels. It's time for us to get off of the addiction to the egregore. The reason why we can't let go of the Christian language in the Bible, and we think we're somehow redeeming it, it is not really redeemable. It is a lot of propaganda, and what you could do is probably go to the original source and actually get it from the horse's mouth. If you want to study the ancient Sumerian, you can go to the Egyptian Book of the Dead and get the quotes of most of what Jesus said when he went to the mystery schools, when he disappeared from the age of 30 to, or I'm sorry, from the age of 12 to 30, or whatever that age was. He went to the mystery schools in Egypt. He learned all about alien technology. He learned all about, a lot of his quotes. The kingdom of heaven is within you. That's from the Egyptian Book of the Dead. He got a lot of his stuff from the Book of Enoch. Of course, you don't want to literalize a lot of this. And so, you can cherry pick from the Bible, but it really wasn't put together based on inspiration as much as it was propaganda. And so, we can research things and we can find some truths here and there. But let me just give you a little example of the egregore here. Okay, so the egregore being a mindset that is created by a group of people that they empower it. See, we are creators. We're so powerful that we can create our own reality. And we are not really co-creators like we think. Otherwise, Source has another creator than itself. We are just simply part of the one that is creating at multiple levels and angles according to the character we are playing. Okay, and so in that, I don't believe in the co-creator thing, because that's another step down to submit to that egregore that was created so that we can feed it. Let me tell you what happened to me when I left the egregore, Jesus of Christianity. And let me just say this. If you think the hell doctrine was dangerous, the Jesus doctrine is doubly dangerous. So if you were to look at the Christian narrative of the tree of good and evil, the good side of that tree in the indoctrination would be hell. The evil side of it would be the Jesus doctrine. And the reason why is because the Jesus doctrine keeps you from knowing you. Only through Jesus you can know you. And now it's a secondary view of you as a secondary person. And so the egregore Jesus, when you go into some of these meetings, and believe me, I built this egregore. For 37 years, I built the eternal gospel egregore, which now the full inclusion people think I'm completely out of my mind, because that egregore is mad that I left it and am no longer giving the energy to it. See, you have to feed these egregores with money, with sacrifices, with prayers, with knowledge, because all you're doing is you're taking your energy and you're embodying it in a belief system that now talks back to you, that blesses you, that disciplines you, that gives you direction. And so when I left the Christian egregore, again, nothing wrong. We're going to build egregores. We just need to build egregores from higher self as an extension, not egregores from a victim mindset as from separation. So when your egoic builds these egregores, they're going to turn into the gods that you must serve. But when your higher self manifests egregores, they become anchors and point of contacts. I call them mystical entities, in which are like your cloud of witness, that which is serving and reflecting who you actually are and are aiding you. They're there to worship you. They're there to lift you up and empower you. Stones are a great way to create your own egregore that is safe, a safe egregore, rather than one that demands you to subject yourself to it. And so one of the ways that this egregore has attacked me is when I left it, I was a big supporter of the egregore Jesus and of Christianity. I was so dedicated to my egregore that nobody could convince me otherwise. I would spend hours and hours and hours praying and seeking and speaking in tongues and building myself up and ministering and prophesying and flowing. And so then this egregore Jesus would reward me with a platform, with praises, with money, with miracles, or what I thought was miracles. See, what this egregore is doing is keeping you dependent on it, rather than realizing that if you let go of it, you're going to open up a door that supersedes the limited power of the crippled Jesus egregore that Christianity has designed. Okay? And so again, I'm not against the real Jesus as an example. Isu, that was his name, not Yeshua. That's more of a position of the Christ. But Isu, who was an ascended master, believed in the one, believed that we were God having a human experience, said go within, believed in family, believed in practical application of love and honor, was actually very much had his feet on the ground, very much focused in humanity, was a humanitarian, really didn't have his head in the clouds. I think that became spiritualized. Again, back to that avoidance of self makes you mentally ill and puts your head in the freaking clouds. Okay, and don't get me wrong, I totally believe in immortality and all of these things, but not from a spooky spirituality. Oh, this God mystically came in and he has promised this, that, and the other. Forget all that. You're a higher being that created a technology in which you sunk yourself into a matrix, put yourself to sleep, your avatar, your AI, and programmed to believe you were walking a spiritual journey. When you truly wake up, you'll realize your spirituality was technology at a higher level that you yourself created at a higher consciousness, in which the energy of Source in its passivity. Can I just say Source doesn't have a personality? You have created a personality through the energy of Source. That's why Source passively observes. It doesn't interfere. It doesn't do anything. You have to take on the affairs of life. You have to labor. You have to harness. You have to release, because you are the brains behind Source. Okay? And I don't mean your earthly brain. I mean your higher self, which was that which came out and became conscious within Source and began to move within itself to create these characters and personalities, in which energy is now knowing itself or shape-shifting itself to gather the data and to integrate itself at this level of the human experience or the matrix, okay? And so, James, you had a question, or you're saying that, could the Bible be almost in a sense a book of shadows used by the power structures in this world? Yes, it is definitely used by the power structures in this world, but these are power structures that are in the minds of man that have promoted it. Remember, this book was written by people based on their perspective of themselves and God, and so much of the perspective in here is a separation. Now, we could look and we could say, well, ultimately, we said yes to walking through this. We planned it out, and I agree with that. I believe that we, the higher self, created a level of religion for us to walk through, in a sense, as clues that would never satisfy but keep us going until we wore out the flight or fight part of us that needed to measure up and perform, so that eventually we would wake up and say, oh, wow, really, it wasn't about this, it was that. And so, yes, point of contact, ultimately. This is where the concept of everything is God. Now, everything is God. Everything I'm experiencing is God. In other words, every abuse I went through in my childhood, even though it was abusive from one side, when I came through it, I realized that I had a purpose to help people in these areas of which I now have experience, because who I truly am could never be touched by that. Only the mindset I had adopted to walk through it. Okay, so we know that there is a truth there in indestructibility and who we truly are, gazing into the human experience, all right? But when you come up out of that, does that mean you continually tell people you need to go through abuse in order to get where I am? Do we promote that once you've learned a lesson, you must continually circle through the same lesson that you learned, because it's now become your tradition or your doctrine? And this is where we get stuck. This is where we miss the mark when it comes to the balance of everything being God. Everything is God, and when you learn the lesson of what you've walked through, of what the divine sent you into for you to learn something, you're now to come out of that. If you continue in the same old shit, then everything is no longer all God, okay? Now you've got that which was God leading you somewhere, but you denied the purpose of going through it. So now it is what? Well, now it's just another trigger. It's just another cycle. It's just another mindset. It's just another delusion, and it's another brainwashing. And so from the singularity, you are sitting there eating popcorn, enjoying the entertaining movie. But yet in the movie, you are in a school in which you are gathering data. So higher self, and this is where a lot of people get stuck. Higher self is saying, yep, I orchestrated the whole thing. I ain't moved by it. Why? Because higher self ain't really in it. It's just observing it. All right? The one that's in it is the avatar, taking in all of the information, the data, the AI. We're taking in all the programs of everything that's being experienced from every angle. And so when we personify that and we think we are all that is in this human experience, we enter into the struggle of offense, trying to change things and so on and so forth. Now, we are here to change things. We are here to bring levels of love. I mean, everything is love, brother. Let's just let the child molester keep molesting because everything is God and everything is love. Can I just tell you that is fucking ludicrous, okay? And that isn't truth, okay? There is a place where we enter into some level of actual, how can I put it, integrity, okay? And so we don't live in chaos because God created chaos. We live in chaos because we don't know who we are, and when we wake up to who we are, we stop living in chaos, okay? That's why it's a school. You learn the lessons, you now let go of what no longer serves you, and you move on, okay? Some here, maybe you're not in that place, so we're not here to judge if you are in a place where you're still spinning and chasing your tail. We all have been. We all had to walk through that. We're not telling you because you're in that place and you can't see what I'm saying that there's something wrong with you. That's not what's being said here. What's being said here is I'm sharing so that if you can't see it, you begin to see it, okay? And you begin to wake up and you begin to say, listen, there's nothing wrong with the journey I'm on, but I'm going to learn to stop clinging to what I think is absolute so I can learn to love myself at a level that I can't currently experience or see right now. And so the Christian egregore will punish you. It punished me when I left the church. Now, it punishes me through the mouths and the thoughts of Christians most of the time because that egregore is feeding them. Well, God's telling me you're in sin, brother. Well, God's telling me that you're a false prophet, that you're deceived and you need to come back, or, there's going to be consequences. And so when I left Christianity, my finances took a hit, my health took a hit, and all the Christians were like, see, yep, it's the judgments of God on Brian Christian. Maybe God will take away his anointing and give it to me, and I can be the next anointed one. I've had that happen in the past, even before I was deconstructing with Christians, okay? And so that whole mentality of we got you now, it proves that we are the anointed, that we're true prophets because we prophesied destruction over you, and a level of destruction happened, you see? And so, yes, I went through hell. We took a major loss. We had to go back to work in regular jobs at minimum wage, struggling financially, having all kinds of people turn their backs on us and come against us. And I don't attribute it to the people. Even though the people were doing it, I attribute it to their egregore, the false god they created called Jesus. Okay? And so this Jesus egregore that is constantly attacking me, it's because I was I was a big giver and a big promoter of this egregore for a long time. And so when I pulled away from it, it began to lose a level of its power. And so in order to empower itself, it has to now create a move of God alongside the awakening that is currently happening so that it can pretend to be part of it. It is not part of it. I will stand here and tell you it is an egregore. It is not part of the actual move that is going on. It is a counterfeit move that is here to try to get the people that have been freed from religion back in. It's going to offer you all the popcorn and sodas that it has, all the entertainment. It's going to offer you the circus. It's going to give you a drunken feeling. See, when you play with egregores, when you feed them, they reward you. See, this is where people get stuck. They go into a church, they hear the message, they listen to the preacher's personality being projected as truth, and healings happen. Miracles happen. So then everything that happens at the church must be true because look, Jesus healed me. Jesus touched me. Jesus did this or that to me. I guarantee you, the egregore would rather give you a miracle and keep you subject to serving it than let you go free to know yourself. Yes, you'll get the miracle. Yes, you'll get the anointing. Yes, you'll get a position. Yes, you'll get a title. Yes, you'll feel important. Yes, you'll have a purpose, but you'll never know yourself. And there'll always be that part that's missing going, man, I just feel like I need to know there's something I'm missing here. And it will keep you tithing and seeking and going after the God of Rome, which is the Jesus gospel, the God of Rome. Now, can we learn from Jesus? Heck yeah. Once you separate Jesus from Christianity and you get rid of the Christian narrative, Jesus really is the example of what it means to go within, to love yourself. Really, we, from a higher place, we created that character, Jesus, to remind us of an aspect of who we are and to help us wake up from part of this matrix that was keeping us under these egregores, okay? Now, we created the egregore to go through the process, but now it's time to come out of the egregore and kill the egregore, okay? So that is where I'm at. I am here to destroy that egregore. And why? Because that egregore encourages child molestation by priests and prophets. It encourages misogyny. It encourages Christian nationalism. It encourages, obviously the extreme right. It encourages stereotypical stuff. It encourages hatred of gays. It encourages end time gloom and doom, the end of the world by fire, judgments of God, raptures, all of these things of either escapism or narcissism. That's what Christianity encourages. And I don't care how sincere of a Christian you are and you're not doing those things. You're trying to love people and help them come out of those. More power to you. But unfortunately, until you come out of the narrative, you're still supporting all of that. So, coming out of the narrative is going to be a hard thing. It's not going to be easy. You're going to have to lose your entire identity. Everything that you've believed you are is going to crumble. You're going to feel like it's a scam. You're going to feel like you were ripped off, and what can you even believe now? That's going to be what's going to happen when you let go, and that's one of the reasons people cannot let go of this Jesus Egregore. Okay? And so we need to come into the place where you're your own hero, where you do not need a Jesus outside of yourself to love yourself, where you don't need to be a co-creator and drink the blood of Jesus. Is this too much for you? We're waking up, saints, we're waking up. We got to drink the blood of Jesus. Really? You got to drink blood? You got to drink the torture of someone else in order to be what? Loved and forgiven? Wow. What an angry, thoughtless God that would be, wouldn't it? And so, when we build these egregores, when we build them, we built these egregores out of a victim mindset. We built it out of I'm not good enough. See, Jesus, he tried to tell the people, look, quit trying to crown me. I'm hiding out over here. He withdrew when they wanted to crown him. Look, quit worshiping me. I'm not your God, but I'm God and so are you. But no. They had a sinner mentality. There's no way that they could receive that they were actually equal with God and that they were the divine experiencing itself. They couldn't receive that. They were stuck in the Pharisaical version of being a sinner. They were stuck in that. and all they could do was exalt the one that brought them the truth. If you showed up in another century and you brought a cell phone, let's say you showed up in the 1700s with a cell phone, you would be either worshipped as a god or condemned as a witch because of the superstition of that current age and mindset. They were very superstitious. Israel was very superstitious when it was brought into captivity through Rome. We do have some history of that. And so, I mean, the Greeks in those days, they had exorcists that cast out demons, and they would drill holes in your head to let the demons out. And if you died, it was because, well, you deserved to die because you were in league with the demon. Okay? They had no concept of emotion, of triggers, of mental anguish, of how the mind worked. So everything was a demon. So you got to realize Israel adopted a lot of these superstitions, and so it was easy for them to now adopt a Messiah, to come and save them. The hardest part, I think, for me of letting go of this egregore was, I'm my own savior now. I'm on my own. I don't have anybody to come and fix it for me. I actually have to be accountable for my own actions. It was very difficult. It's very difficult for somebody that we have been so steeped in the mind control and the programming that we can't even believe we can get up and do anything on our own. We have to be codependent with this Christian egregore Jesus, okay? And this is what's keeping us from actually accomplishing anything. I heard somebody talk about this, that I think it was in a book they were referring. I don't remember the name of it. I'll see if I can find out. But it was about when we transition from this life, that the Christians are going to have the hardest transition, that they're actually going to have to go to some separate kind of like decontainment chamber to strip them slowly of the egregore that they're carrying over into the next consciousness, that they will be in total denial of what really is when they wake up. Another aspect of the reincarnation trap to keep cycling us through, that's that Jesus that meets you in the tunnel and says, it's time to go back. That's the egregore saying, I need to funnel those frequencies more. I need to hold on to those frequencies. I need to zap your life. I need to take what I can. We're coming into a place where we're getting free from these egregores. We don't need a middleman. That's right, James. And right now, what's being promoted in this Christian egregore awakening is they know they're losing ground. So they're trying to pump it up and use their cares mania to get people back to the church. They're trying to get leaders that have come out of Christianity that are starting to make a stand and make a difference in the collective. They're trying to lure them back with flattery, with self-exaltation, with positions. This is what's happening, okay? I'm surprised right now I have gotten a call. I get texts all the time from preachers saying, brother, we remember the days when you used to preach the word. Come back and preach that. We'll open the doors. We'll finance you. I've had all kinds of freaking, bribes offered if I'd come back to Christianity. And bring that back around. I feel bad because I brought a lot of people into Christianity, and I'm here to bring a lot more out. Yep, you've noticed that too, James. All the ads to join the church. Why? Because nobody's tithing. The pastors are going to lose their Mercedes Benz and their nice silk suits pretty soon. And so. It's sickening to me. I'm sorry, it's just sickening. The organized religion is sickening. To me, it's glorified pedophilia spiritually. And I just can't stand it. But I love people, and I know that there are some good people, some sincere people that truly are looking for love. They are truly looking for hope. They're looking for where they fit, where they connect. And when you're broken and you feel like you're an outcast, the first place you're going to desire to go is the church who calls themselves outcasts, and there's an answer to help you. See, so you feel like, oh, people will understand me, and it's a trap. It's a trap, because where you really need to go is you need to get around people that believe they're not outcasts, and neither are you. You just believed a narrative, and you can come in and you can get free without having to go through years and years and years of brainwashing, in which you then need to come out of that and taking years. So yeah, there might have been a time for you to go through that when everybody wasn't awake, but there's enough people awake right now that you no longer need to go through that. You can say, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and bypass that 40-year wilderness experience, that allegorical story. I'm going to go ahead and bypass that because I'm going to give a good report of the land. I'm going to decide, and we can use those scriptures allegorically, can't use them literally, but you can use them allegorically, and you can say, wow, you know, Greek mythology used to be the religion of the day. Do you know everybody believed Greek mythology back in the Greek days was it? And guess what Greek mythology sounds a lot like? If a volcano erupted, in those days they didn't understand geology and what was really going on. The gods are angry with us. Let's fast and pray and give our fruits and vegetables. Let's sacrifice some animals and let's appease the gods. Then the rain would come on their land. And oh, the gods are happy with us. Let's celebrate and let's have food and let's have potlucks and let's have glory gatherings. And, doesn't it sound familiar that Greek mythology sounds just like Christianity? And what you're going to find here is, and I've had people say, oh, yeah, Brian, you're tripping. There'll never be the end of religion. I said this 2 years ago. Christianity will be just like Greek mythology. It will become a dead religion that people wake up from and they realize, oh, I was mentally ill. Oh, I really didn't want to look at myself. I was in a lot of pain. I was in a lot of denial. Christianity gave me a way to avoid myself, gave me a way to feel better with a false facade. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to wake up from that, and it's going to be hard because now I'm going to have a hard time believing any truth for a while because the one I grabbed hold of was a scam. But I also wore out all of the need to cling to a God outside of myself through this process. And I was able to wear out my performance-based mind that needed to try to do something to be something. And so eventually we do hit zero eventually. And I encourage people, go all the way to zero. If you want to get out of Christianity and you can't, maybe watch some atheism on TikTok exposing Christianity. Hang out with some atheist friends. You know why? Because they're going to cause you to have critical thought to actually look for evidence. And when there is none, the scam will be revealed. Now, once you do that, now you're gonna have to sit and realize that a lot of the beautiful things you experienced in Christianity, of edification, of love, of encounters, we're being viewed through a Christian lens, through that egregore, and once it's gone, and you kind of go through the whole death to spirituality altogether, that still small voice, which has really been you the whole time, will begin to emerge, and you'll start to see through a different lens. You'll enter back into a level of the spiritual, the metaphysical, and this, through another lens in which you'll realize, okay, there were some real spiritual breakthroughs and encounters I had while through the lens of Christianity, but it really had nothing to do with Christianity. I was drawing the omnipotence of who I am as the divine, but I was using that as a placebo effect by anchoring it through the lens Christianity. So I was giving all the credit of everything I already had in me that was divine, releasing as supernatural, but I was giving the credit to this egregore as the one doing it, when really it was just simply me manifesting my higher self. And when that begins to come forth, you'll actually begin to realize, oh, none of this was really in vain. I was God pretending to be a Christian, to pretend to worship a false God, so that I would wear out all of these mindsets because it was time to wake up. And now I've come to the place where now I'm waking up and really just changing a lens and realizing that, oh, I can do all the things that I was crying out for Jesus to do. I was doing all those things, and I was just experiencing it as a separate entity, helping me as well. So you got both of those. I was going to say, so Buddhist tradition is where Christianity comes from, according to Jordan Maxwell. Yeah, I don't agree with that. Jordan Maxwell might have a level of that, but Christianity came from Rome. The way I could see that which was prior to organized religion, I could see with some Buddhist influence there. But Buddhism doesn't have a God to worship. You're actually ascending as your own divine being, while Christianity has to have a separate God outside of itself. But the way did have a level of equality in certain aspects, but it wasn't until around AD 400, and when Constantine took over and appointed his own bishops and claimed to be the 13th apostle, which would be Jesus, and basically took his Roman Empire and said, we can really get the people to subject themselves now, because we've got this Christian God that can enforce wrath if they don't obey the laws of Rome. And that's really the only reason why a country or a state emphasizes a religion. They're not emphasizing it because they actually have a belief in that religion. They're emphasizing it to bring the people subject through propaganda. If they break the laws of the country, and they don't care, they might care more if they're going to have eternal punishment through all these rules and regulations of a God of judgment if they don't obey the laws of the land. That's one of the reasons why the Bible says submit to the authority of the land, because anybody in their right mind would not submit to the authority of this country right now. Nobody in their right mind would agree with the way this country is being led, with the way the world is being used for the elite to make profit off of people, and off of misery, and off of disease, and off of poisoning food, and off of all of that. And so you won't see me submit to any authority in this country whatsoever. You know, I would have to be forced to subject myself to it. Why? Because it's sick. It's sick. I'm my own sovereign. I'm my own authority. And that's what I subject myself to, is my own authority, nobody else's. And nobody else should be subjecting themselves to anybody else's authority, living through the opinion of somebody else's own brokenness and lie of separation. So when we want to break free from the egregore, just realize you're probably going to lose your friends. You're going to feel like you're losing your mind. You're going to feel like everything you walk through is for nothing. That's the dark night of the soul. Press through. Get around people that have already deconstructed. Just rest with them, and allow those that haven't entered some new propaganda, or haven't exchanged, angels and demons with, good and bad aliens, in the sense of now it's all this literally, they've switched heaven and hell with lower and higher frequencies, and you got to watch out. You don't want to again switch over to the next propaganda. Now you might for a while, because you've got to ease yourself through, because the mind won't allow you. If that's the case, do the best you can to just realize, I'm walking through this because I'm slowly coming out of the narrative at different levels, okay? I remember coming out of Christianity. Your family thinks you're nuts, James. My family doesn't. Well, I don't really. My family really isn't spiritual at all. My parents, they've transitioned, but my siblings, they probably thought I've been crazy the whole time, whether I was a Christian or not. But I did have a lot of friends think I was crazy, and that was okay. I just realized that those friendships were over, and it's okay. It's okay to let go of that which no longer serves who you are. So, it can be hard. But if you'll simply just take the leap, and realized, you know what? I keep jumping back and forth. I knew a lady, she's no longer on my friend list. She blocked me recently, who called me and asked, just said, I'm getting this revelation. My husband, her husband was not only a Christian, but had written books, was very successful, and spiritual warfare, anything that is outside your box is a demon, that kind of thing, things to keep you in the box. And she was calling saying, I'm deconstructing, I'm coming out. She had even taken some psychedelics, which are really good for deconstructing. And I think her and her husband had taken mushrooms, and anyway, they hadn't done it the right way and setting, and he's peeing on the wall, and she's running around freaking out with 6 of her kids, and it looks like he's deconstructing, and they call me and they're asking for help, and I'm trying to help them, and anyway, the next day he seems great, like I'm finally realizing, that I've been worshiping this God outside of myself, and she's all excited, and she's ready to go forward because she was ready to leave him, and she's let go of the egregore, and then next thing you know, I want to say less than 48 hours later, I'm getting a call from her saying, my husband doesn't want me to talk to you anymore. He thinks you're after me. Everybody's after me. Anybody that talks to her is definitely wanting to have sex with her, and all of that. I said, well, that's not really for me to get involved in. That's between you guys. I said, I really don't play the manipulation game here. So if he wants to gaslight you and you want to go along with it, feel free. Or, you both can go along with it, or I'm friends with both of you, whoever is willing to have a real relationship. I'm here. And anyway, I want to say, she's like, yeah, I agree. He's off his rocker. I'm going to end up leaving him. And I don't believe in this Jesus thing anymore, and blah, blah, blah. And I want to say within 24 hours, I was blocked. And next thing you know, they're both probably running off together, agreeing that this Brian guy's not of God, and how dare him interrupt our relationship, And so you're going to have these types of things going on. You're going to have this mental instability. One of the things you can tell with Christianity, and many of you that have exited it know what I'm talking about here. You did not need to ground yourself when you were a Christian. You did not feel like you were free falling or losing reality or going down the rabbit hole or going somewhere, maybe and it feeling like a near-death experience or dying or something like that. We didn't have all that in Christianity. In Christianity, we were anchored in the egregore that did everything for us. We didn't even have to be accountable for our own actions. It was either a devil doing it or God working all things together for good, And so we didn't have to worry about that. But when I let go, I was free falling, man. I was like, geez, I don't know if I can even, am I passing away? Am I going on to some other plane of experience? It was freaky. So, we have to ground ourselves with nature, taking your shoes off, using crystals and other egregores to anchor yourself that are non-toxic egregores, that which will kind of keep you from passing away from the 3D. And so I'm going to actually be doing a whole series on egregores. This is just a taste for people that might be interested in understanding these egregores. But let me just give you a little quote before I go today. I want to talk a little bit about, the wars that we're going through. According to some of the Tibetan monk or Tibetan Buddhism perspective, we're actually not fighting amongst each other. When you see people fighting against each other's religions, those are the egregores that we created. So mankind has not had really in and of itself one divisive moment of differences of religions. It's the egregores we're creating that have been starting the fight, okay? And so that's what's really been going on. An example of the problems that can arise with the creation and worship of a being through the practice of rituals can easily be seen within the politics of modern Tibet itself. Okay, one of the most peculiar problems facing the Dalai Lama, even in exile, is the controversy over the worship of the popular Galupa protector deity Dorje Jugden. I'm probably not pronouncing that right. The gist of the problem comes from the activities of Geshe Gelsing Gyatso. I'm totally screwing that up. And his particular movement, whose principal practices is that of Dorje Jungden. While the main argument presented concerns religious freedom or the freedom to worship Dorje Jungdong, the ramifications are considerably greater, according to Isabel Hilton in her book, The Search for the Panchen Lama had the reputation of being able to impart enormous good fortune to his devotees, but also of being extremely vindictive and jealous. One of the Dalai Lama's tutors had encouraged the Dalai Lama himself to worship Dorje Jungdong, but the Dalai Lama had decided as a result of several dreams that the deity was harmful. He gave up the practice himself, then banned it in all institutions that were connected with his person. This included Galupa monasteries, and of course the government in exile. Hilton further states the origin of Dorje Jungden dispute lie deep in Galupa politics and a controversy too complicated to explore here. But the significance of it pertains to sectarianism in the Tibetan Buddhism. The defenders of Dorje Jungdong are characterized, okay, it goes on and on and on. So this is a hard read on here, but basically what it's talking about here is there was the creation of these deities that they created, that one went rogue because there were two similar worship patterns that were similar, and the one got jealous of the other, and one was good fortune. And until this other god was created, the one that was created began to give was giving good fortune, but when it became jealous, it began to attack the people, and so was called a destroyer. And so they had to make it illegal to disempower it. The day will come when Christianity becomes illegal for that purpose. Okay, all the times, and I want you to think about this, all the times when we used to believe, remember the day, oh, I wanted to be a martyr for Jesus. Remember all the martyrs? The early days, they were so engulfed in that martyrdom increased the power of that egregore. It made it independent of the people for dying and shedding blood for this belief system that has manifested as a deity, as an entity. Okay, it's not real. The mind of man. This is why the God of Christianity has a mixture of loving you, but based on your performance, and holiness is based on your outward appearance, because that's how man thinks. So the egregore now demands obedience based on the intellect of man, not really a divine mind. This is why there's a mixture here. But I wanted to read you 4 types of spiritual practice here. No, wait, not that one. I wanted to just give you two powers of the mind. According to some of the Tibetan monks, you have the Tulka, T-U-L-K-U, and the Tulpa, T-U-L-P-A. I shared this in our group on another video. The power of the mind in action here, okay? So these are the power of producing magic formations. Tulkas, or less lasting and materialized tulpas, does not, however, belong exclusively to such mystic exalted beings. Any human, divine, or demoniac being may be possessed of it. Okay? The only difference comes from the degrees of power, and this depends on the strength of the concentration and the quality of the mind itself. So it's talking about how to create tulpas and tulkas. Okay? Tulpas and tulkas. Okay? I'm trying to skip through some of this here, but it says the idea of the tulpa's ability to develop a mind of its own. She writes, once the tulpa is endued with enough vitality to be capable of playing the part of a real being, it tends to free itself from its maker's control. This, say Tibetan occultists, happens nearly mechanically, just as the child, when his body is completed and able to live apart, leaves its mother's womb. Yet while David Neal claimed to have created a tulpa fashioned in the image of a jolly medieval monk, a creation that later developed a life of its own and had to be destroyed, she also raised the possibility that her experience was illusionary. Oh, maybe I made it up. I may have created my own hallucination, she writes, although she also reports that others could see the visualized monk as well. Now, what's crazy about this is, just like the birthing of a child, there comes a point when it takes on an identity of its own. This is what you would call a tulpa, okay? Tulpas are more or less creations which may take different forms, man, animal, tree, rock, at the will of the magician who created them, and behave like the being whose form they happen to have. They'll behave like the being whose form they happen to have. Do you know how many times people would come to me with visions when I was an apostle and I was moving in miracles in my church called Pillar of Fire Church, and people were coming from all over, and gold was raining in the meetings and miracles, and I mean just tremendous stuff going on there. And people would come and say, you know, God gave me a vision that you're like this, this, and this, and basically they were just relating what this man-made tulpa was speaking to them. Okay? And it was just like me, by the way. So they were describing my character in the form of how God was perceiving itself and me in this interaction. Okay? And so we create these, and they believe, and they act like the ones they were created to be. This is why when people say, I'm birthing a ministry, I'm birthing a movement, what are they birthing? They're birthing what a group of people have been pouring into, of a belief system of their narrative and their perspective of what they believe a God is outside of themselves, that now when it births and all of a sudden there's a movement, people say, we prayed, we prophesied, we told you it was coming, it's here. What is here? It ain't a move of God that's here. It's an egregore that they've been feeding over a period of time that is finally come out of the womb of their belief system and is now taking on a mind of its own, in which now they have to feed it as magicians, in which they're calling themselves prophet, priest, and king. There is no prophet, priest, and king. There are magicians and illusionists that don't know they're magicians. Okay? And by the way, we don't know how powerful we are as these creators, that we are literally projecting a world, or projecting a belief system as a world that we call mankind, and everybody is you experiencing yourself as everyone, and everybody is another version of you. That too is an egregore, but it's an egregore that is serving a purpose of the divine for it to know itself and to experience itself from every possible angle. All right, I'm going to give you another one here. This is a hard book to read. That's why I got to write one now that's a little bit more simple. All right, so you have the tulpas, and you have the, what was the other one? A tulpa and a tulka, okay? So let me see here. I'm going to try to get down. So the belief in tulpas is universal in Tibet, and there are many stories about them. Some of these stories being terribly tragic, imaginary forms which are sort of robot, which they control as they wish, but which sometimes manage to acquire some kind of autonomous personality. It is also stated that during their periods of deep meditation, the initiates surround themselves with an impassable occult protective zone extending at times right around their hermitage when they adopt the life of an anchorite. Novices who are training themselves according to the methods of the secret teachings are sometimes advised to exercise themselves in creating mentally around themselves an environment completely different from that which is considered real. For example, a forest. The usefulness is to lead the novice to understand the superficial nature of the sensations and perceptions. The relative world is close to the imaginary world because, as has been said, error and illusion dominate it. Most of humanity is unconscious of the fact that they live and move in a world of phantasmagoria. You have to look that word up. All right, so basically what's being said here is that when you're a novice and you don't know how to create the right egregore, you need to put yourself in an imaginary environment while you're doing it so the egregore can't hunt you down in that part or connect to a part of your mind in which it begins to create its own autonomy and suck you dry at a later date. Kind of crazy how that works. So you have to camouflage your mind by imagining a completely different place in your mind where you are creating the egregore, so it confuses it so it can't live off the lower frequencies of fear that you might be feeding or creating it from. Okay? Out of loneliness, I create an egregore. Out of the fear of not being anchored, I can create an egregore. So you want to definitely free fall enough into the truth that no matter how far you're falling down the rabbit hole, you're okay to be a neutral observer, and from that place create the egregore that is not coming from the lower frequencies but coming from higher self. Now there is the toka and the topa. If I don't know where it is in here, I'll have to find it at some point. But we've looked at the toka. The toka is something that can manifest. It can become autonomous. But the other one, man, why can't I remember the name of this thing? The toka we've been looking at, it usually dies off with the one who created it. But the topa is a much more powerful, while the toka is more from an individual, the topa is more from a collective. And the topa that is maybe initially created by a charismatic person that starts a movement that gets a bunch of agreement that creates this egregore, a topa is actually one that remains and gets even more powerful after the death of the person. Okay, so you have tokas that are more localized in a community, very smaller, usually in a family, and you have a topa that can start out with an individual or family but turn into a movement that becomes worldwide and a worldwide religion that's been fed for a long, long time. That one gains power through the death of the person that created it. So we could say that Jesus comes on the scene and he's teaching one thing, but the people's mindset are hearing another thing, and in that they begin to look to him in their mind, but it's a twisted version of him in which they create a toka. When that toka it reaches full term in the beginning of the toka, it was the way. So it was very much equality. It wasn't, propaganda yet. It hadn't become autonomous. But when Jesus died, through that death, the toka decides to raise itself up in a resurrection, and in the 3D experience, which is within the mind of those who have twisted what Jesus came to reveal, and now turned it into this hierarchical religion in which you have to look for the sky daddy, and Jesus is returning and he's the way and we're sinners, and all of that came from the resurrected egregore Jesus, who then brought them into the Roman propaganda and continued into the American propaganda, in which people are so desensitized because the egregore Jesus demands that you do not look outside of the Bible. You do not have critical thinking. Everything. If you don't just believe what you are taught and what you're told to believe, then you have no faith, and God can't bless you. Remember, it is impossible to please God. You can't please God. You have to. Let's look at some propaganda here, so I can give you some. Okay, I can, not to give it to you in the wrong way, obviously. But what is it? I think it's Hebrews 11, right? Where it says here, verse 6, but without faith it is impossible to please him. For he that comes to God must believe that he is, and that he is a rewarder of them that diligently seek him. Again, the egregore does not want you to find out it's an egregore. So you have to seek it by faith, not by actually knowledge or proof of what it really is. So this is why God's ways are above your ways, and they're beyond finding out. It's a manipulation and a red flag and a gaslighting to keep you subject to the propaganda. Christianity is a really good American religion because it's a Republican religion that keeps you subject to being the stereotype husband and wife you've been programmed to believe you are, so that you will buy the products that are for that propaganda, so that you will vote for the laws that are a part of that propaganda, so that those at the very top can continue to take your energy, take your money. Let me just say this, egregores are not just in religion, they're in politics, they're in sports, they're in everything that you'll put your energy into that is nonsense, okay? There's a lot of it out there, and it's falling apart. And we're now learning to do what? We're learning to let go of some of these concepts, okay? All right, so the tulpas are more or less these one thing, and the tolkas are another, okay? Man, there's just so much here. Let me give you real quick 4 types of spiritual practice in initiations and initiates in Tibet that elaborate on the various types of rituals. And this is called the Sanskrit term of sadhana, often translated as practice or sometimes liturgy. And David Neal points out its literal translation, it means to success, a means to success or means to accomplish something. What are those accomplishments in the practice of Tibetan? I can't even pronounce that. They are 4 in number. Okay, so let's look at this. This has to do with the creating of them. Okay, so you have number 1, gentle or pacific, Shiva, for obtaining long life, health, good fortune, which is pacifying. Number 2 is expanding, Gyaspa, for obtaining wealth and fame, which is increasing. These are egregores. There's 4 practices you can use to create different types of egregores for fortune, for obtaining loved life. Number 2, expanding, for wealth and fame. That's an increasing. Number 3 is potent, for obtaining influence and power, which is magnetizing. So you have these different aspects. And number 4 is terrible, for obtaining the power to cause evil, to kill or destroy in whatever manner by occult methods. It's called wrathful. So these are the 4 types of spiritual practice. Pacifying, okay, increasing, magnetizing, and wrathful. This is what's going on in our society, people. This is what's happening. And we're being wooed in by, I'm going to give one last key here. We're being wooed in by the body's chemical reaction, because here's how egregores operate, the ones that are being used to dominate us and keep us asleep and keep us feeling good and drugged at a certain level of a chemical reaction. All right. So I did a full video, several videos actually, in the new shift training. I did a full training on this, as well as some other videos where I talk about the body's interpretation of your world. So most of us waking up for the first time are waking up. You notice our diet is changing. We're realizing DNA, and we're waking up past the body's interpretation of the brain. So most of us, when we start waking up to 4D out of 3D, we're waking up to concepts of shadow work. We're waking up to frequency work. We're waking up that we're quantum. We're waking up to entanglement. Now, that's you starting to use your brain for the first time. You haven't actually entered into higher self yet in that aspect, except for maybe some elements of which higher self is orchestrated a journey for you to get through that is going to really wake you up to higher self at a higher place. So really what you've come into is you've come into using your brain for the first time. Yes, we have not been using our brain. We thought we were thinking memories with our brain. We thought we were obeying this egregore God just through our brain. But what we've been doing is we've been going through 2 matrices. So you have the matrix of the egregore that's been trying to teach you how to subject yourself, be a sinner, how to give your energy, how to be a slave. But it's all moving through the body's interpretation that is feeding your brain. So your body has a consciousness. Your biology, or that which appears to manifest as biology, has taken our brains captive to feed it a narrative to get its chemical reactions. So your brain is not addicted to chemical reactions, your body is. And your body has convinced your brain that you live in a 3D world of 3D world of 5 different senses, in which you live out a literal narrative as a literal human, and the Bible is literal, and Jesus is literal, and all of this. It keeps you in that state because the body is secretly a crackhead building belief systems and emotional beliefs, emotional experiences as your reality, and for you to believe, well, I experienced this. It's real. But what you've actually experienced is a chemical reaction in your brain of either a negative belief that has caused consequential hormones to be released to make you feel bad, which would appear as the wrath of God and disciplining you, or you're going to have dopamine releases in the reward center of your brain every time you obey the Lord and do something right. Your brain automatically gives you a release, and that release is being interpreted through your body as a spiritual experience, as a reward for pleasing God. That is an extension of the egregore that has put its tentacles in through the biology to suck dry the chemical reactions and eventually destroy your reward center, to where now you have to leap out in faith to get that same high, which is God rewarding you or God answering you. You follow what I'm saying here, okay? So realizing that we've been duped by a chemical reaction we've called spiritual encounters at the level of our body ruling the brain and living off of the chemicals as a crackhead, but giving a percentage of it to the egregore that's an extension of the biological fear-based victim mindset in which we created this Jesus Egregore, okay? And so yeah, this can get deep. This rabbit hole keeps getting deeper and deeper. Now, the way to break away from the body running the mind, and I'll give you another example. Let's say so-and-so doesn't text you that you're in love with. And all of a sudden, that feeling of feeling in love and all of that, all of a sudden you start to feel, well, what if they're thinking this? What if they don't love me? What if they're with somebody else, and all of that? And that need to want to text them is an addiction at a chemical reaction level in the brain, in which you have been a slave to chemicals based on the body ruling the brain. And so if you don't get that text, you get the wrong kind of chemicals and hormones in the brain out of body memory, in which it's built a loop for itself to live off of your brain chemicals. Now, when your brain wakes up, it wakes up out of 3D to 4D. And in 4D, you go, wait a second here. These are chemical reactions. This isn't who I am. And you begin to wake up to a whole new world in which you're a frequency experiencing itself. Now, you haven't entered into the power of one yet. You're just being introduced. You haven't entered into 5D. 5D is a place of being in many areas, where 4D is still a place of doing and working with shadows and all of that. I did another video on that before. But what's crazy about this is when your brain starts to take your body subject, your diet changes. All of a sudden you want to eat healthy. All of a sudden, you're starting to see some of the narrative of how addictive you were to certain feelings to avoid other feelings or other parts of yourself through this religious egregore. So you start to deconstruct. This is where a lot of the deconstruction begins to happen, is when the brain begins to take control of the body. Now, what's beautiful about this is to break the addiction is for the brain to do what? To go within. So when the brain goes within and loves itself, it releases the same chemical reaction of the reward center of what? Love and endorphins and dopamine. Okay? But it's no longer addictive. It actually reverses the addictive behavior because you've gone within to love the self. You're no longer being used by the body's consciousness to be the crackhead to drain you of chemical reactions and to eat those chemicals to get high and avoid itself, it can no longer keep you spinning with the egregore. So going within and loving yourself begins to break off the need to avoid yourself through chemical reactions, because now you're facing yourself and creating a chemical reaction that allows you to love yourself without the addiction or the entanglement of the egregore. Okay? And so this is what is going on at a deeper level of the game that we're in, okay? Of the matrix within matrices within matrices. And we don't know how deep we are, but we're pretty deep within the matrix, okay? So again, I am not against the man Jesus, the ascended master, who came in, who married Mary Magdalene, who taught people how to enter into being the one, to go within, to quit looking outward, and used his what he learned in the schools of mystery in Egypt and in the Reiki healing in India and learning Hinduism and doing psychedelics to open his mind and to come out of the religious dogma of Judaism. He had to disappear for a while, and he had to come out of that. Now, when he came back and he began to bring the truth, and he didn't come and heal one person. He came and he showed them, your faith has made you whole. You are the one experiencing yourself. But of course, they latched onto him and as a placebo began to manifest the God that was already in them, the divinity that was already in them, the virtue that was already in them. And Jesus was already showing them, your faith has made you whole. That's why when he showed up in certain locations, he couldn't do any miracles, because they didn't believe he was the one. And so the point is if you're the one, you can do miracles no matter what anybody believes. But if everybody's the one, then what is happening is where people are still living off of egregores, if they don't believe that egregore can empower them, then there is no power. But if they believe this one can, then they will receive some sort of deposit. So we're now moving from the brain ruling the body, and this is what we call 4D. Okay, this is the fourth dimensional place. Has nothing to do with time, has nothing to do with any of that. I mean, that's a completely different category. This is where we begin to move into frequency work. This is where we begin to move into shadow work. This is where we open chakras. When we get to 5D, we realize all of that was just a movie. It was all for entertainment. It was all for interaction. It was all for expression, and none of those tools added one thing to us, because again, that was another level of an egregore. If you want to look at a healthy egregore, Mother Earth, Mother Gaia, what we would call our universe, our planets, nature, our ecosystems, that's the 5D higher self that has created an egregore known as Mother Earth for your avatar AI to enter a simulation, to begin the great experiment of gathering all data, and to build egregores, to then destroy egregores, to deliver yourself from egregores, to get in bondage with egregores, okay, and then come out of all of that 3D and start over at 4D to where you're not entangling yourselves in deities. Do you know that the Tibetan monks, if you go back to the ancient, they knew they were magicians creating egregores as deities. And do you know why they created them? Initially, they were being created to worship us, to empower us as the God spark to manifest the fullness of the worlds, and they were here to help sustain or to hold our energy and to keep it cycling, so that in our finite human experience in this avatar, we would continually have an energy source that we pulled from that was not outside of ourself, but what we created within ourselves to fuel that. Unfortunately, the people that were doing this were not aware of the subconscious agenda of their own mind that was still twisted, which was also part of the higher self's plan to walk us through at one level. But now it's time to come out of it. It's time to come out of it. It's time now to let go of the Jesus Egregore. It's time now to let go of the propaganda. The hell doctrine was nothing compared to the Jesus doctrine. The hell doctrine I thought was it. When I first let go, I thought this is the one. We let go of this, we can salvage the rest. Then I realized my need to salvage the rest was me not willing to face the fears that I was about to lose my entire identity that I had built around this egregore Jesus. And, it's time that we wake up, everyone. I'm hoping this video will go viral a little bit and people will understand that a lot of the Christian narrative right now, where we're experiencing the same as everyone else. Hey, we're getting it too, guys. Yeah, we're getting it too. It's all about Jesus. Nope, that's the problem. The moment you made it all about Jesus is the moment you didn't get it. The moment you made it all about the Bible is the moment you didn't get it. It's the moment you're, again, trying to get people to jump on the bandwagon and stay bound and stay a victim in that mindset. So again, let go of it all. Hit zero. Then comes full circle. Find your inner voice. Allow yourself to realize there is nobody coming to save you but you. You're here to save you, and you don't actually even need to be saved. You set up this whole system to eventually come full circle and to wake up to who you've always been. Now, we can say, well, Jesus taught us to be that. Yes, that's great. So let's leave out the hallelujahs and the amens, and let's leave out the Bible quotes, and let's just leave it at Jesus taught us that we're God. Now let's be God. We can talk all day in 4D about what we're not, but now it's time to enter the 5D about who we are. I hope that this message has helped you. I hope that it's given you some clarity. Please like and share. And if you're in the neighborhood and you want to find out a lot of exclusive videos and posts that I will not share publicly, that are exclusive to our Patreon, you can go to our Patreon. It's www.patreon.com/Life Imagined, all one word out after that. And you can go and you can subscribe for $14.99 a month, in which we do trainings and videos. And we also have a free group on Facebook that's a bridge into the Patreon, where everybody can come and share their own truth, as long as they're not micromanaging others or trying to build an indoctrination. They can come on, they can share. We're going to celebrate you. We're going to celebrate your truth, whether we understand it or not, because really the only truth there is this objective experience that you are currently engaging with for the purpose of an interaction and a love affair with one another. And so that's the purpose of our truth, okay? So I just encourage you, come on over. Come to Life Imagined LLC. It's right there on Facebook. And it's free, and you can come and share your truth and just be loved and be who you are and get your voice back and everything you need there. You can experiment with everything that you're walking through right now and make it a fun journey rather than a I've got to get free journey. It's not about getting free. It's simply about becoming awake and becoming aware of everything that's happening at an intentional level. Okay? So be encouraged. This is not a warning video to make you afraid of anything. If you feel led to go to these great moves of God that are happening through Christianity and you want to go and get whacked, feel free to go. If you know who you are, maybe you can help them to begin to wake up. And, I want to say that the language is changing in Christianity, but as long as it's Christianity, it doesn't really matter how the language is changing. They still have the same belief. You need Jesus. You need a Savior. He had to die and raise again. You're just not good enough otherwise. You're not complete enough. And if that one doesn't work, then they'll bring in the eternal one. Jesus, it was the Lamb slain from before the foundations of the world, but was manifested as Jesus' death for you. Okay, well, why did you need to die for yourself? Why did you need to send yourself, to condemn yourself, to die for yourself, so you could save yourself? And why do all of that? I think the story has a truth, where we created a storyline of Jesus came to save us. And then the story went to the aliens came to save us. Then the story went to we're the saviors. We came to save us. What's really the story about? It's really about mankind waking up going, you know what? I need to come up out of this belief system. I want to come up. I got to come up out of this. So I need to have all of these finger puppet saviors until my split mind realizes, oh, wait a minute, I'm in a matrix I designed to give me this issue with depth perception in which I see everything is separated. And I just wanted to see what it would be like to experience it. But now I'm entangled. So it's time to come out. You know? That's right, Hope. Jesus was a predicted ascended master. And if you look at that, you could find that Thoth, which was, you just look up Thoth, okay? And the emerald tablets and some of that. And you'll find that Thoth could have very well been Enoch, could have been Metatron, and also could have been Jesus. So we see that in the reincarnation of all of it over and over and over again. And what you also have is you also have the story of Jesus that supersedes the Jews. I mean, you have several messiahs and virgin births and saviors prior to Jesus as well. So, yes, it was predicted, and it was already lived out multiple times before Jesus showed up. So again, just another part of the narrative coming, part of it to say, hey, you created a storyline where you believed you needed to be saved because that would make a great movie. So now let's move beyond the narrative. Let's get out the popcorn. Let's understand why we chose this movie. And let's realize that we were divinity that was never actually helpless in the first place, but simply wanted to see what it would be like to be so. So hopefully this message helps you. And I love you all. I'll see you soon. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye-bye for now.